The final step in your Photoshop video production process is to export your project. That is, convert it into a type of file that people can view. The process is called rendering. Unless you do this rendering, people can't view your work, so you need to do this final rendering process. I'm going to give you a basic overview of the rendering process in this lesson, and then I'm going to walk you through the two main formats that you'll use to render your project in the next two lessons. So to follow along, go to Working Files, open up Photoshop PSD Files, and open up 0801 Exporting. This is my edit of the dressage lesson that I shot. I put it together so you can get a sense about how to do some basic editing, and I'm going to talk about it in a little bit more detail in the next lesson. I've got it here more or less as a placeholder. The thing is, after doing all this work, I want people to be able to view this. And unless they own Photoshop and have all my assets, they can't view this project. So to let people view this, I need to export it. And the way that I export it is I go up to File, and then I go to Export, and I choose Render Video. That opens up the Render Video dialog box. And I'm going to talk about the specifics of this Render Video dialog box in the next two lessons, but I want to give you a general sense for what's going on here. First of all, you give your file a name, and you give it a location. And then you need to choose whether you're going to export with the Adobe Media Encoder or the Photoshop image sequence. Now, you're not likely to use the image sequence because it creates a whole bunch of files. For example, this project is about 1:30, which would create 2,700 files. So you're not likely to choose the Photoshop image sequence, and you're going to stick with the Adobe Media Encoder. When you choose the Media Encoder, you're going to choose one of three formats. It's going to be DPX, H.264, or QuickTime. DPX is probably not a format you're going to work with. DPX stands for Digital Picture Exchange. It's a very high-resolution, high-level format that typically is used as an intermediary step between something like Photoshop and then a high-level video editing product like Premiere Pro. And so for folks who are just doing some basic editing using clips from their DSLR, they're probably not going to use DPX. So I'm not going to talk about DPX specifically. I just want to let you know that it's there. The two main formats you're going to use are H.264 or QuickTime, most likely just H.264. H.264 is the format that you use to create MP4 files, MPEG files, very commonly used. And you have all kinds of presets and options that you can use to determine exactly the kind of format that you want to export this in terms of its size and things like that. QuickTime is the Apple MOV file format that's used pretty frequently on the Mac side of things. There are two primary advantages of working with QuickTime here inside Photoshop. One is that you can export in the full resolution mode, meaning there's no compression whatsoever. It's the highest quality you can export at. And secondly, you can use QuickTime to preserve transparency. H.264 does not allow transparency, but QuickTime does if you choose that option. So let's just say you've got something like a 3D object that's animated over a transparent background. You can keep that transparency intact if you choose QuickTime. So you can choose H.264 or QuickTime. And then once you choose one of those, you can choose a preset in terms of the quality. You can choose the size, meaning the resolution, the frame rate, the field order, which is probably going to be progressive, and then the aspect, meaning the aspect ratio, which will probably be square, meaning 1.0. Then you can choose the range that you want to export. Now, I've got all frames selected here. That would be the default, but you can limit the amount of stuff that you're going to export. And finally, there are a couple of render options that are available. You've got alpha channels when you work with QuickTime. You won't have that with MP4. Then 3D quality if you're exporting 3D. So those are the basic settings you choose from when you're rendering video. I'm going to walk you through the H.264 and the QuickTime formats in the next two lessons.